Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL cornerback Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. This podcast is presented by BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for college football, the NFL, plus baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting, plus your favorite casino and card games available to play right on your phone. Head to betonline.ag or use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out the latest Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. And if you're looking for the perfect beer for Penn State football season, we've got you covered with the State IPA. Special thanks to our friends at Funk Brewing for creating the best tailgate and game day beer for Nittany Lion fans. State IPA is available now at beer distributors, grocery stores, Funk's tap rooms, plus select bars and restaurants. Visit www.funkbrewing.com/beers/state-IPA to learn where and how you can get State IPA. Check out the link in the description of this podcast for more information. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly.
Hi, everyone. Penn State knocks off West Virginia by a score of 38-15 to kick off the 2023 season. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. We literally met in person for the first time yesterday, and we're coming to you for the first time ever on this platform in person. I'm very excited. We're in State College, as you can imagine, by all of these things. And yes, that is Justin's Orange Bowl jersey from back in 2005, for those of you watching us on YouTube. This was a very encouraging first effort, Justin, by Penn State football. There's a lot to extrapolate from this, and like I walk away from it. We were talking about it off air. Is that this felt very good, but it still feels like a team that just doesn't quite know what its offensive identity is altogether. How did you feel?
I think I felt the exact same way. I think you hit it on the point when you talked about the identity. I feel like coming out, obviously first game for Drew Allar. I loved what we saw from just a fundamental standpoint. I mean, 5 yards a clip from the running backs. He was efficient, 300 yards passing, hitting deep TRCs, one-touch guys from Keandre Lambert. But at the same time, there was a flow. There was a mix in the flow of the game from the offensive standpoint of like, okay, what is the identity, right? We're getting 5 yards a clip, but we're passing the ball. And seeing those different things of that nature. But, I mean, I think it's a solid foundation to a week one win.
It's funny because we were talking about the stats. Allar, 21 of 29, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 11.2 yards per completion. That sounds fantastic on paper. It didn't feel like a game where Drew Allar went off for 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns, did it?
No, it didn't. But you got to realize, I mean, the plays that he was completing were chunk plays, right? We're talking like 25-yard plus plays. And I loved how he was moving in the pocket, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. You wouldn't think based on those numbers, that's how the game flowed. And I think it was, again, when we talk about the identity, it wasn't, I think the first series that they came out was like a nice run plays, getting 5 yards a clip in the play action pass, the deep TRC concept where they crossed at the in the middle of the field and he moved in the pocket and hit Keandre with a stripe and they turned it up. I think that even showed a level of identity to the running game and like coming off of the play action pass to complete a deep pass. But I don't think there was ever a rhythm of that nature for the rest of the game. So I think that's where we see a little bit of the inconsistency when you talk about that identity or feeling like it was like a 300-yard game.
And then especially on the ground, overall Penn State, 35 carries, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4.2 yards per carry between Singleton and Allen, the two people that most people are going to focus on. Nick Singleton, 13 carries, 70 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, and a touchdown, along with 14. Katron Allen, 10 carries, 51 yards, 5.1 per clip, no touchdowns, and a long of 9. It just felt like to me, Justin, as a fan, I was expecting to see more of the run game. And part of me thinks maybe this is the true offense that Mike Yurcich has wanted to run for a few years now.
I could definitely see that. I mean, when you talk about a 23 combined carries between the two running backs at 5 yards plus a clip, you think that there's a concerted effort to either limit the carries or also a focus on getting Drew Allar like comfortable running their passes, moving them in the pocket and doing those different things. But with that, like again, there's not a commitment to one. Like now we're going to commit and run with our two possible All-American running backs. And it's like, no, we're going to figure out these different aspects and see what the defense gives us. But that lack of identity, consistent identity, I think throughout the game just has people on the edge of their seats. But when we see it executed properly, I mean, still score some points.
And that's the thing is that 38-15 in your opening game against a Big 12 opponent. And I know you and I talked about it in the preview episode. This is a team that did not do fantastic things last year within the conference. They're picked to be dead last within the Big 12 this upcoming year. So I'm not trying to overstate what West Virginia is. And I'm not trying to understate what Penn State did today. There's just something that felt off about it. It didn't feel bad. It just didn't feel like the phenomenal, spectacular, mind-blowing effort that I think a lot of Penn State fans were hoping for. That 72-yard touchdown to Keandre, that felt like, oh, this is exactly what we've been hoping for.
100%. And I think that again, that feeling, I hate to beat a dead horse, but when we talk about just the lack of identity of where we're going with it, I think you keep like the edge on the seat. It's like when you're going on a long road trip and you know you're almost there. It's like you're not as anxious, but like when you don't know where the ending is, you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? Like with the unknown of what Drew Allar was, and obviously showed a lot of promise and some great things that I like for him to grow on the rest of the season. But at the same time, I think that, a lack of giving the running backs, 15 plus carries a piece and seeing that, I mean, maybe one of those runs turns into a 60-yard carry where we look at the offense and like, oh, this is a really prolific thing. So I just think first game jitters or first game things to get out the kinks. And even from a play calling standpoint, like when we say Mike, like this is what his offense wants to operate like. I mean, he has a lot of weapons, and sometimes you have to get the ball to a lot of different people. Like we only seen, 2 targets on Dante Cephas to transfer in.
Yeah.
And I was excited to see McClain and as those other guys coming into the fold. So it's an interesting opener, I would say.
Keandre, 4 for 123 yards, 72 of which came on 1 completion, but 2 touchdowns. Trey Wallace, 7 for 72, long of 18. Malik McClain getting involved, 4 for 58 and a touchdown late there in the game. Liam Clifford, who you and I have sung the praises of, 2 completions. I'd forgotten that he changed his number from 82 to 2. So I'm like, who is 2? And I was, all right. And we're all getting used to some new things. But Liam Clifford looked like a really reliable slot guy, and almost to the point that Tyler Warren had 1 catch, no catches for Theo Johnson. And that's nothing against Theo. That's just kind of how the game played out.
No, 100%. I mean, just based on what the defense was giving Drew, especially on like the outside floods, the middle floods, and different things of that nature, that second level was covered, and he was hitting, whether it was Keandre on the side or McClain at one time or Wallace. It just didn't seem like he was targeting the tight ends, or even was just like him staying in the pocket from a standpoint where, a lot of times when you're running crossing concepts that the tight end might sit down in the middle somewhere like that. That wasn't exactly happening today because they had him on the move, right, and different things of that nature. And you would like to see those guys get involved, but at the same time, we're saying I would like to see the running backs get more carries. So it's like it's a pick your poison, but at the same time, I think that again, that lack of identity completely being established. I mean, you see like some of the kinks or just some guys not getting the ball in their hands. Right.
What did you think about the diamond pistol formation?
Oh, I really enjoyed that. That was something that, back in the day when Green Bay used to run that with Aaron Rodgers, called it Green Bay Max, and they used to do a lot of damage out of it because you can do mixed personnels, you can do play action pass, you can get the quarterback on the run. I love those wrinkles into the offense. I mean, it just brings another lever for them to pull when they attack defenses. I mean, they scored on the T formation. I think one of the few teams that are using that. And it's just in the time of college football, I mean, just the schematics of it. I love them pulling out something like that for Drew Allar.
Looking at the rest of the offense, and one of the things that was just kind of a specter over this game, news a couple days ago, a friend of the show and somebody who had a ton of promise in the game of football, left guard Landon Tengwall having to retire due to medical reasons. It's ironic for you and I because we literally just had a conversation a number of weeks ago with Journey Brown here on the show. So someone who also had to retire for medical reasons, and it sounded like whatever happened with Landon, he's still processing it. And, the business of football does move on, and not without him, but just in a different capacity. And you saw JB Nelson slide in there at left guard. Right. And for the most part, the offensive line looked quite solid. And there's been a lot of discussion from James Franklin for a number of years is that they want to cross train their offensive linemen, is that there's going to be flexibility. You can play guard, you can play some tackle, you can play some center. Norzad, we were expecting there at center. When we got Wormley, we got Caden Wallace, we know exactly what we were getting with Olu Fashanu. And then it was just a question of what was going to be happening at left guard. Overall, the offensive line, how did you feel about it?
Actually, I was encouraged by the offensive line. I mean, especially for the type of plays that they were running. I mean, sometimes they have some leaky pressures and the way Drew took a couple hits. But other than that, either that or just the way that Mike was calling the offense, like getting Drew on the run and buying some more time. I was impressed by his athleticism and movement in the pocket to create more time. Because there was a lot, like even Olu maybe got a cheap sack because he had a great pass block, but Drew Allar maybe held one of those times where he held the ball a little too long, took a sack, and I mean one of those leaky ones. But overall, I would think the offensive line did a good job for the first day out.
Yeah, and considering that was only a handful of days that we all learned about it publicly, I'm sure the team has been preparing for this for a number of weeks, and it sounds like as much as was happening. But to see a lot of guys get in there late, and we saw Bo Perbula get in the game late as at least a backup quarterback, Trey Potts getting some carries late in the game, which is something you and I had talked about. Is like, hey, in mop-up duty, and this is no disrespect to Trey Potts, him getting in some plenty of different offensive linemen as well, wide receivers. It seemed like they got a lot of guys in there on offense. When you mentioned Allar, there were a couple different plays where in the first half, he looked exactly like I thought he would. The peaks were high and the valleys were not too low, but one or two plays here and there was like, hey, you should eat that, as opposed to there was one where he just floated over the head of one of his running backs, and I was like, just eat that. Don't throw that potentially into traffic. And it just seems like these are going to be learning experiences for him that he got a few of last year, but now you're thrown into the fire, as you like to say.
No, 100%. I would even like piggyback off what you said about even though he threw over the running back. I thought that was like one of those situations where he was pretty poised and it was an intentional high throw to kind of throw out of bounds to not take the sack. So even when you think of those type of things, like him using his arm talent in a way where you limit the risks or mitigate your risks of like a bad sack or something of that nature. Because I think there's something to that. Obviously, you don't throw it in the pressure. Like he did that in the middle of the field, like a high pass, obviously not, but to the sidelines where somebody's in phase, you could just toss it out of bounds into the stands. You save a sack. But at the same time, there were some moments where he was holding the ball a little bit too long. But again, first career, start as the man, and I mean, you expect that.
Last minute start, by the way, like waiting until the last minute to see who the starter was. Just rounding back to the wide receivers you had mentioned briefly, Dante Cephas, 1 catch for 22 yards. Concerning or about what you expected?
Again, when we talk about all these different weapons, I mean, concerning in the fact that I don't know if I've seen him enough in the game, right? Like we saw like McLean, Wallace, and obviously Keandre. He was. I mean,
Keandre was very good
as he always built up to be that one-touch guy that we have. You would like to see him more, but he was efficient in there with that 1 catch for 22 yards, even though he kind of dropped on the out right after where it would probably cost him a touchdown. But that would have been a nice, I mean, putting those together would have been like 2 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. But even with that, just question like the targets and just the reps. So just seeing as he's working into the offense, but he did look good while he was out there.
The one thing that was really encouraging for me, looking at the offense as a whole, and again, I don't mean to say this in a way that's negative towards Sean Clifford, but I think most people would say that Drew Allar athletically has more gifts than Sean Clifford. And it was something as simple as seeing, I believe it was Trey Wallace sometime in the third quarter, catches basically a 10 and out that got extended to be about 13 and out, something like that.
Right.
And you see just Allar effortlessly flick it. And that's something that for a number of years was not necessarily a guarantee. And then, having played wide receiver, relatively simple route. That's a tough angle altogether to complete that pass. It's a tough throw. But he makes it look easy at times. And it's something that Penn State fans have not seen in, I don't remember necessarily the last quarterback who had that type of arm talent at Penn State.
And I always say, like, arm talent gets you so far, especially with playing high level football, right? It comes down to decision making and moxie. And those are things that sometimes are questionable with quarterbacks with big arms, because the decision making is kind of tilted based on their confidence in their arm. And sometimes the moxie is there, and that overcompensates for the decision making. But with Drew, for his first time in being a high skill set quarterback with an elite arm, I felt like his decision making was actually, above the line.
Agreed.
Like first day,
agreed.
And even some of the times that he took some pressure and things of that nature, like I loved how he moved in the pocket, kept his eyes downfield, and again, the arm talent shows up in ways where it's like, that's what you need a big arm for.
And again, I'm not trying to bag on Sean Clifford, but
it's not.
That's what the upper echelon of what that position can be.
And when we say that, Sean Clifford's probably going to start an NFL game this year, right?
I believe he will. I guarantee he will this season,
100%.
at least one.
No, and then even talk about the arm talent, like the TRC route or the big crossing route that he hit with Keandre on the first long pass. That was a rope, him moving away from the pocket to throw it down the field. He made it look routine.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 45-yard throw on the ropes to, right in the breadbasket for DeAndre, not like a high pass, but like a bullet where he's moving away, break down a pocket. Really putting things together. Like when Daryl Clark was on the podcast talking about what a quarterback needs to do, go through his reads, stay in there, take hits, doing all those different things. He showed that consistently today. Again, he's not the one necessarily calling plays or doing different things of that nature. So, I think as the season progresses and the offense continues to mesh, I liked the start of the offense, even though there were times where it was like, it seemed like it was puttering, or it was like, okay, what are we exactly doing?
It's trying to find its identity. And you hit it. You said that before, and it's something James Franklin has talked about, is that this is not the NFL. There is no preseason to kind of work things out. And I imagine we're going to see more of this probably until the UMass game.
Yeah, because especially if you deem yourself being the more talented team, you're still working through things, right? Like you're working through like the offensive play calls, understanding what right receiver mixtures operate. We understand, got great tight ends, great running backs. Do we feed them the ball 30 times at the beginning of the season when we know we got a gauntlet of a Big Ten matchup and we're gunning for the playoff? So there's so many different things or just perspectives when you look at that, but the efficiency of the offense, like you said, I think it's a good thing when it feels like, what was happening? You look at the stat sheet, it's like, 5 yards a clip, 300 yards passing.
You raise a very good point there, is that I don't think you needed either running back to get 20 carries. I know, like you and I talked about in the preview episode, you're like, I like to see each guy get 150. I completely agree with you. But maybe this was a situation where Yursich, Franklin, and company were like, we don't necessarily need that to win this game. And you don't necessarily need Drew Allar to go completely ballistic offensively. If anything, this was a really good opportunity to see what the potential depth of your wide receiver core was. And also with the change at offensive line, just to see how everybody was going to fare in this sort of situation. I don't know.
I completely agree. Especially when you're seeing there's a little bit of the defense giving up some run plays and things of that nature. And so I don't know if that goes into the offensive side of the ball, right? Like, okay, we got to be a little bit more, conservative on how we approach things. But a lot of middle floods, a lot of outside floods from them, like levels for a go against the defense, like easier to read pass concepts, along with Drew Allar being on the move. I think they gave him some freedom to play quarterback a little bit.
Penn State fans, Smack Apparel has the best gear for talking smack on game day. Head to smackapparel.com today and check out their Let There Be White tee for the whiteout game against Iowa at Beaver Stadium. Also, there's Drink Up, Roar On, Saturdays we are, and you can still get a Save a Couch Beat WVU shirt. If you're watching this on YouTube, scan the QR code on the screen to take you to the website instantly on your phone. Visit smackapparel.com and use our promo code STATE10 at checkout for 10% off your order. That's STATE10. Again, that's smackapparel.com, promo code STATE10 at checkout. Why wear boring when you can wear Smack? Are you looking for undeniably good hair and beard care? Then Maestro's Classic is perfect for you. Maestro's has beard washes, beard oils, beard butters, plus hair gels, pomades, and now body washes. It's one brand for every man. Visit maestrosclassic.com. That's MAESTROS classic.com and use our promo code STATE20. That's STATE20 at checkout for 20% off your order. Maestro's Classic, crafting a better you.
Let's talk about the defense, as you were just mentioning. Defensively, nothing necessarily alarming by any means, but there were some aspects that you just touched on. The run defense was
Leaky. Yeah.
Okay, it's okay. And then not much of a pass rush, but when I talked about this off air, is that this was an offense built on tempo, and their whole game plan, if they're throwing the ball, the idea is to get the ball out in less than 2 seconds, and then it's RPO, it's run pass option, it's trying to move the ball quickly. Any concerns from you in regard? Let's start with the pass rush.
The pass rush, not necessarily. Like, again, I don't think there were times where they were just sitting back there where you're like, oh, we need a pass rush to get to them. And like you said, it was quick throws. And when it was an RPO, the thing that concerns me are leaky plays and the lack of, like pressure or just pressure amongst the line and pushing them back a little bit. I think that lacked but guys were running around. I mean, I think you saw a little bit of first game spatial awareness things where a lot of missed tackles, guys running around and, maybe not wrapping up and things of that nature. But you would like to see just more knockback from the defensive line, getting rid of defenders and, stopping stuff at like 1 or 2 yards and not 4, 5, 6.
When it came to the rushing attack for West Virginia, overall 40 carries, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns along of 17, an average of 3.7. That average, that's fantastic.
100%. So that's what I'm saying. You go back to how it looks and what it feels like while you're there, and then go back to the numbers. It's like, well, they played pretty efficient.
And then holding Garrett Green to 16 of 27, 162 yards passing, no touchdowns, no picks, 6 yards per completion. You and I talked about this again in the preview episode. This is not the offense that we once saw with Geno Smith. This is not the offense we once saw with Will Grier at West Virginia. And I am not even going to remotely put these two in the same universe, but Pat White is probably the closer, that style of offense is closer to what you saw here. No one's going to ever confuse Garrett Green for Pat White. Let's be very honest there. But at the same time, CJ Donaldson had a nice game altogether. I think he had 18 for 81 and a touchdown. I wouldn't want to tackle a 240-pound dude that many times, and he got his yards.
I didn't realize he was 240, but he did run hard. And I think through that, like he was running through arm tackles and different things of that nature. And I think maybe it was an expectation of us talking about how elite the defense is. Like when we come out and say 3.7 yards, the run defense, they did their job overall. Like there wasn't any huge plays and different things of that nature. But I mean, it's a solid foundation, but still things to correct. So I think that's where you want to be week 1, to be honest.
Lockdown you. How'd you feel about the DBs?
I mean, and again, I think the DBs played a nice game coming out. No touchdowns given up, 6 yards per catch. I mean, there was one play where maybe one explosive play where Johnny Dixon was in like a half field type situation, and they made a nice little play down the rhythm. But outside of that, no touchdown, 6 yards a catch.
What more can you ask for?
What do you want to do? I mean, after you just watched like a Colorado game where there's 500 yards, everybody's all over the place.
That was strange. That was really strange, that game. Did it seem like to you West Virginia avoided Kalen King and went after Johnny Dixon more? Because Johnny looked great. So it's not like Johnny got picked on or anything like that. It just seemed like maybe they favored going to his side more often.
I definitely feel like they avoided Kalen King. I feel like that was a part of the game plan. We're not even going to look on that side of the field. Like they played very few formations. to his side of the field. And I mean, what else should you do? I mean, he's projected to be a top 20 draft pick. I mean, 20 pick draft pick. I mean, I'm not saying that right, but first round draft.
First round, yeah.
Let's just say first round. Thorpe Award. I mean, watch winner. I mean, and you watch the way he plays. He's a type of corner where if a quarterback makes a mistake, he will make you pay, even from the run game, pass game, short passes. And not that Johnny doesn't, but that's where you attack.
A lot of faces in the secondary, which is something that you and I expected. Something I guess I didn't necessarily expect was for KJ Winston to get as much run as he did and looked very good altogether. But you and I have discussed it, is that there's what feels like 4, maybe 5 guys you can put in at safety.
Man, yeah, they were all running around making plays. Jalen Reed was making some plays. I think Keaton had a really solid game.
Keaton was outstanding.
Very
today.
timely tackles. I mean, third down, getting off the field. I think that's where they kind of showed up in the secondary a lot of times. I mean, even in the run game, they came up with stops when they needed stops, right? So, I mean, I'm holding them to a standard of an elite defense, even when we say like leaky yards and things of that nature. But I don't know if maybe one explosive play all day, and I don't even know if I don't even know if it was by the stats a truly an explosive play. It was
sure,
just, a 20-yard catch.
If you're Manny Diaz looking at how the defense did today, this was not Manny emptying the playbook by any means.
Absolutely.
But if you're Manny, what do you take away from today?
Take away that you have a lot of depth, but you just got to make sure we continue to attack up front. I think he tried a little bit of compensation when we're sending some corner blitzes, sending Johnny on a corner blitz a couple times to, I think, compensate for the run or just them getting a little bit more yards than they expected. But again, having a corner blitz or just some different overload blitzes being your go-to after, some leaky things, like you said, I think he's holding a lot of things back on what he kind of shows. So, I mean, you feel good about this, your defensive showing week 1.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, you got Delaware next week at home. You're on the road against Illinois the week after that. You're at home against Iowa, which should be a challenge. And then, as I mentioned, after that, you get UMass bye and then UMass.
Right.
So it's just, you have some time here to figure these things out. I'm not discarding the Illinois game or the Iowa game. Those will be difficult. But you at least have this game against West Virginia to look back on the tape. You have the Delaware game to look back on, and you can really explore some things against Delaware. Here's one thing that worried me, and this is something as a Penn State fan has worried me for years, is the kicking game.
Wow.
So Sanders Sahadak came out, was the primary place kicker, 0 for 2. Alex Felkins, transfer, comes in, does just fine, does mop-up duty, so to speak. Gabriel Nwosu kicking the ball into the freaking stands just about every time on kickoff, so you don't have any concerns necessarily about that. Punt game looked fine. But it's been something for years under the James Franklin era where you've seen guys that are, cross-trained, where they're both, place kickers and they're also punters, and it's some guys doing the same job at the same time. And it's just, it's been a minute since that kicker that it's like, man, we don't have to worry. And I'm reminded of Kevin Kelly looking back there at that orange blood. And we all felt pretty good about Kevin Kelly once upon a time. That game, not so much, but eventually got the job done. Yeah. But this is something that continues to be a problem, and kickers don't grow on trees. This is a very difficult position to recruit. You know that very well.
100%. I mean, kickers are sometimes an anomaly, especially when you put the red light on them, right? Like it's prime time, night game. Kicking at Penn State, there's a lot of pressure. And sometimes when we talk about I'm not giving excuses, but the win in Beaver Stadium is a little different, just like at Heinz Field. Again, I don't know if that's a reason for missed kicks, because I don't think those were kicks that should be missed at this level. But at the same time, I have to figure that out. It's an interesting dynamic because, since I've been here, when I was here, the punters was always kind of on point.
Yes.
Whether it's just
for a while now,
100%. It's with the field goal situation, whether it's a cross-training thing or not finding the kicker early enough. Kickers is between the ears. So sometimes you just got to find those guys that are wired a little different.
And Franklin has said that this has been a true competition at that position. And he's been very happy with just about all of the kickers, it sounds like. So it's a small thing until it isn't.
No, I think today you missed 2 field goals. That's, I mean,
Not small. Yeah.
Again, when you line up a season with expectations, you're not just saying like, hey, how is this against the top 25? Like, is this going to get us deep into the playoffs or get us to the playoffs? And missed field goals won't, right? Like leaky runs, like those leaky runs against a Michigan or Ohio State, like they won't let off, and they will do that until you stop it. So those are the type of things that I think. I'm not saying that they're planning ahead, but everyone's aware of the expectations of what we're up against. And again, the goal is to be the best in November.
And I don't want to jump ahead either, but I'm about to. You talked about the leaky run defense. My brain immediately went to another team that wears navy blue and yellow, and I'm like, this could be a real problem in a number of months with Michigan.
Sometimes a little blood's in the water, but you got to fix it. And that's the thing about football. It's a game of matchups. And like when there's matchups that can be exploited, it's up to this coaching staff to figure it out. And I think even some of the adjustments that were made, they started bringing some more pressures in the second quarter, third quarter. And I mean, based on the outcome, slowed it up. But with that being said, an inferior talented team probably have the advantage on the defensive line versus their offensive line. So with that moving forward, just making sure guys need to do and understand how to play even those RPOs, right? Because I think it's a different attack when someone's just running straight at you, and how that offense might attack you. So week 1, I say leaky defense, but again, it's based on the expectations of what we were supposed to do against West Virginia.
Of course. So you clear West Virginia, 1-0 mentality. You're looking forward to Delaware and how the rest of the season goes. Based on what the expectations were coming into this game, 110,747 fans filled Beaver Stadium. The expectations couldn't be any higher. You and I were both in the tailgate fields, in the stadium. Like it was palpable. What's your overall feeling going away from this game? Because personally, I'm like, it felt good, but part of me is kind of like, I feel like there's more. I feel like there's a better team within Penn State still to be discovered.
I completely agree. And I think that's a good thing, right? I think they're not hitting on all cylinders, but you see the potential for what all cylinders look like. I love that first drive that we came out where it's like, Brian, every clip, everyone's holding their breath for Case Run Allen. Then it's a play action pass, and it's a big touchdown where the quarterback's moving and doing a lot of different things. But with that being said, like you see different areas of growth, whether it's continuing to run the ball, whether it's different pass things, getting different receivers involved. So with that being said, you feel good about the W, but I definitely agree that there's a better team that exists within Penn State, but that's always the case in a 14-week season.
And that's not a bad thing.
That's what you want.
That's not bad. Yeah.
Like, because I think if they come out and win 45-0, like, who knows? Maybe it's like, all right, we don't need to work on what we need to work on, or X, Y, and Z, and you continue to grow. But like having points of emphasis that you can continue to get better on that are clear and definitive, I think it makes the goal that more laser focused or that much laser clear.
And listen, credit to West Virginia. Their front seven played better than I think we expected, than many expected. Their defensive line was active. Their linebackers were active. Their secondary was about what we expected. But they certainly put Allar in some situations where he had to think as opposed to react. And that's just the steady progression of any athlete, is just getting to the point where you're not thinking and you're just playing.
Right. That's what you want to do. I mean, that's how you slow the game down, right? Where your gifts can actually shine through. And I think there was moments where we saw the gifts of all the talent that Penn State had. But then, like you said, kudos to West Virginia. I think they did play above the level of where I thought they were going to play.
Agreed.
And like you said, with that also being said, Penn State didn't play, I think, to where their potential can be, but they showed a lot of what's in the tank.
Mm-hmm. Very encouraging altogether. So I feel like I can be a pessimist at times. So I just
think it's needed in the sense of like when we're talking about where we're going.
Yes. So it feels good. Penn State gets a 38-15 win to open up the season against West Virginia. Let us know how you guys feel about this game. get in the comment section on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, rate us. And for those of you that may or may not have happened to have enjoyed a state IPA or 2 or 3 or 4 while you're enjoying the game this past weekend, feel free to hit us up on social media. We're very excited about how excited you guys are about the beer, and we're looking forward to the Delaware game this coming week. So, and thank you for having me in this spectacular abode you have here.
Oh, appreciate it. Appreciate you coming over. We are,
Thank you all so much for joining us. We're looking ahead to Penn State versus Delaware next week.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, let us know what you think of the show on Twitter @TheKing1 and @TomHannafin. State of State is presented by Bet Online.